How's everybody doing tonight? It's Friday night. Out here, um, continuing the second part to sit down in the valley with DM. Yeah, I decided to start interviewing myself. So um, I think I left off. I was as a child living in a real bad neighborhood of many. Um, so yeah, it was Toronto Street and Savannah. We were out there today by that area. Um, Brought a lot of memories back. There also was a cemetery nearby there called La Piedad Cemetery. As a kid, there was a road that led to it, and we used to go down there, all the time. Um, just go run around in the cemetery as kids. And there's also uh, airport by there. What Not at that time, it wasn't as big as it is right now, but it's changed a lot since I was a kid. Um, yeah, and also there was where they would take the animals to get burnt. So every so often you would see the ashes. Either it was from the cane fields or from them burning these dogs, these animals at that place. It was kind of creepy. It smelled good for some reason, like somebody was barbecuing. I don't know. Yeah, that's what it was at that time there. And well, this little small area. I forgot the name of the other street that was across this field. Now there's like a movie theater there, but when I was a kid, there was an empty field there between. It was Toronto Street first to the south, Savannah Street, and the one across that field. I don't know what it was, but there was always these scrimmages going on with these people. They were always fighting. There was a guy there that lived there. I'm not gonna say his name. I'm not allowed, to say people's names, especially when you're writing a book or you're doing a segment or whatever you want to call it. And these people, you're not you're nobody to say their story. You can mention what you went through because a lot of these stories are mean. Being involved in these people's lives, meeting them at these certain times. But there's some situations that you can't talk about or mention their names. So this individual used to live there in the neighborhood across that field, and he was an individual known to be the person in the neighborhood that just didn't do anything. You know, it's just, their whole life was crime, and so this person was known to party out with younger people than himself, and he would get them in trouble or get them addicted to certain, drugs, whatever. But that's just the person he was. So one, my brother would go hang out there. Um, yes, they would drink, do whatever, right? So this guy was known when, you know, time came that you annoyed him or he was through, making money by you. Uh, he was known to be a person who would get rid of you. You know, if you know, you know. So that particular night, my brother was, my dad would tell him, "Don't go there. Don't stop hanging around with that person. He's not a good person." So, but he kept going. He was young, just wanted to have a good time, which every young person does. But it's just some situations. When parents tell you no, it means no, and you shouldn't. You know, from experience, sometimes you should listen to the direction or the stuff, some of these elders are telling you, especially if it's coming from your grandparents or a family member like your father or mother. And sometimes you should listen, and he didn't listen. So that night, they, I guess, yeah, you know, this guy just couldn't manipulate him or into a situation that that was good for them, because these people would make money off of other people's back, so uh, they beat him up that night really, really bad. I mean, and then they dragged his body to a point in that field where cars used to drive by there, and they would go by there real fast. So, the person would get hit, especially if they were lying on the ground. You wouldn't see them. So, yeah, my brother was beat up real bad, and his body was taken to that point. And but since you know we have always been people that respected other people and helped other people in either dire situations or bad situations. That's just the type of person my dad was. If you needed help, he got it for you. So they came and told me, hey, your son's over there on the road, really, really, really beat up. And so just because of that person, my brother didn't get run over or killed. And so, yeah, it's just a little patch of land, so much chaos. Um, Either by people needing to make money off of other people, or by people that needed to manipulate a situation to work for themselves, or you know, it was just everybody had a reason why what they were doing, right, wrong. It just didn't matter. You know, Again, that's what I experienced in these areas. They might have a whole other different story. Like I told you, there was an officer living in that area. We lived right next to him, but did these people care that he was a police officer? No. It's just what they did, just what they knew, how they were brought up. It was eat or be eaten. So I learned how to, you know, do the best in my situation. And if I wanted something, I had to go get it by any means. So maybe a question I would ask myself in this interview that I'm doing with myself would be, so what was your first experience that you can say changed you? Uh, my first experience that really had an impact in my life in that area at that time was I didn't want to be like these people. I didn't want to be a cholo. I didn't want to be a gangster. I didn't want to be, you know, anything that would cause me mental anguish or physical pain, you know, 'cause I just saw these people destroy each other's. I mean, we were living in a time where they didn't just fuck with you. They'd come and, kill your dog or hang your dog, or they would put glass in the meat and, feed it to your dog. And these areas that I lived in, that's just the politics and the way you dealt with, you know, getting back at somebody. You hit him where it hurt. So so I became very strong in that, trying to avoid that and trying to, instead of being a dog, always showing my teeth, I'd rather be the dog that was wagging my tail, you know, and looking at people like real happy to see them instead of going like ugh, fuck this person because of the way he was. Uh, no, like I literally became friends with the ugliest, cringiest person in that area, and I got their respect and the people that respect that hanged out with them, and now I also respected the guy that just didn't do anything, and like I said, to in the neighborhood there was an officer that lived next to us. And the example that he gave was to the other neighbors next to us, which they were also They had the same last name as we had, but we weren't related. We just had the same name, the same last name. But they were very different. They were very quiet. Nothing. They never got involved with anything in the neighborhood that had nothing to do with them. They just weren't that type of people. They were workers. They got up early. They did what they needed to do. Um, and the son was very peculiar. Like he would collect Hot Wheels. I was like the only person that was allowed to go into their home, because that was another thing in those times. You didn't let you needed to really watch who you hung out with, because they would come and rob your home. Your own your own friends would you know they, they would they would come and literally wait for you to leave your house and break into your home and steal your shit. That's just the way it was. It was these people trying to. They didn't have what they would see on TV. They didn't have what they would see to the north side. So they were trying to get it by any means. So yeah, I was like, literally, I think I'm the only one that was invited to their home, because I was just not known for that. I was not known at that time for being, a vulgar person, or a person that would come back later and want to steal your shit. So this young man, he would collect Hot Wheels. He wasn't a nerd. He was more like a geek before that even existed. He liked his little electronic games. I don't know if you remember this old football game that would light up, and it was just a bunch of little lines. And yeah, he had that, and he had the box for it, and he had it on display. His Hot Wheels, he would buy two. He would buy one to keep it in the pack, and then he would remove the little plastic cover on the Hot Wheels, the little bubble, and he would remove that one, and in the car he would set the little bubble on top to the favorite ones that he wanted, that he really liked. And that's the way he would display his stuff, and you could tell that you can tell the whole family had OCD. Like, you should, their home was like everything in order, just everything perfect. Uh, their, the mom, the clothes was ironed, you know, uh, everything just had its place, and if you move something, like, he would go automatically put it back, and try to get it back exactly the way he had it, and he would let please don't touch my stuff, ask me. And as you know now, later on in life, that I see these people selling, these collectibles. Anything that you harm on that by not asking them to touch it, you do a crease, in the cover or whatever, and the thing's not worth, anymore now what it would be worth if it was, in an immaculate condition. So yeah, that's how he would take care of his stuff. But other than that, you know, and then the police officer that lived there next to us, he gave him the example, and I guess, you know after experiencing living, next to, us and them, uh, later on in life he became an officer. So, and now I think he's an investigator, or he's a very, high powered, person in law enforcement, and to somebody I knew that, respects, to this day. He respects me and sees me on the street, and very, very nice. Uh, he's now, I hope, you know, I'm not sharing too much about his life, but now, he's gay. He's married to another man, and but the guy's a very, he became a very decent person. You know, who cares, what he wants to be in life or what he was. The point that I'm trying to make is that there was good people that came out of these very bad areas, and they just needed to live in that area because that's all they could afford. That's the house that his dad bought. You know, their house was paid. You know, back then a lot of these men would, purchase their homes, cash. And So yeah, out of that neighborhood, he came out of the neighborhood as a very very decent person and an earner and just just an all around cool guy. So he still says hi to me and still gives me that respect that he showed me when he was young and never had an issue with the guy. Still don't. Um, I'm not the person to call law enforcement. Never. I'm not the person to talk to law enforcement ever because it just couldn't be seen, doing that. So even though we had family members that were law enforcement, we couldn't be seen talking to them. We just knew that there had to be a divide. We were on this side, they were on that side. You know, Good guy, bad guy, family or not. We just had to know where we were standing and where we were at and where our loyalty belonged. So, yeah, you were in my area. You had a friend. You know, you had to. It took time to really, really trust somebody, especially living in those times and places like that. It was, people just, like I said, they eat you, you eat them, and that was just the way it was. So back to, the interview. Yeah, that changed me because it showed me that you can get out of this area being a success. And as I you know grew up, also around positive, male figures and positive female figures, um, it molded me, into being the person who I am and how I deal with my money and how I deal with my life and how I deal with my family and how I deal with my kids. Um, you could say that, wow, man, you suffered or you saw a lot of crazy shit, but everything has its purpose. You're at you're where you're at because that's where you belong. That's where you need to be. That's where you should be, and and that's what you focus on. Uh, you focus you focus on the situation and what you learned from it and what you took from it. Even if you suffered through it, but it's a learning experience, and it's either a learning experience for you or for you to pass that on to your children or to your family members or to whoever's having a difficult time. Instead of squishing them, help them up, teach them what you know. Even if they don't want to hear it, sometimes you need to push it upon them. So, back to what experience really changed me for like my whole life was that seeing these people in these bad areas still make it out, or in the time they were there, the way they were dealing with the situation. There was a bus driver. They call him the hamburger. The hamburger, and he was real cool. Like he would like give you a treat. You acted cool on the bus, and you were being respectful and helping him out. With these other kids that just wouldn't listen or they would give him a hard time. He would let you sit in the front with him, so you could have a view, out of the bus, the front window, and everybody would yeah, like just a simple guy, a simple person, a bus driver. He would change your frame of mind. Like you can't be destructive all the time. It serves its purpose when you need it. And he would educate us, to shut up, to shut the fuck up when you have to shut the fuck up. And so that's what this person called the hamburger guy taught us is to shut the fuck up and do what you need to do sometimes. Or like the saying says, when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. Don't call attention to yourself. So that helped. The hamburger guy, if you're resting already in peace, you deserve it, guy. You deserve it, guy. You're a good person. Thank you. So, um, I was about 8, I think. I was about 8. Um, they started building this. They tore down the sugarcane field and everything, and they started building this big, like, I mean, it was huge construction. Like, this huge construction was going on. We didn't know at the time what was coming. Um, And then later on, by going out there and talking to these construction workers and everything, where they would kick me out, like, "Do you need to go home, little boy? Something's gonna happen to you. Like, like, where are your parents? Not this." And it wasn't my parents' fault. I would run away. Like, I would go and leave during the day and take off. And my mom, I would wait for my mom. As soon as I would see my mom falling asleep, like, knocking out, boom, like, run off, man. So I would just see it, you know, and she would make me sometimes, stay there in the room with her until, because she knew as soon as she got off, I'd take off. So I would take off to this, where this construction site that they were doing, and I found out that they were building, this place called, now it's called the Plaza Mall. They were building a mall, so we were getting a mall in our area, like, holy shit. And again, I was 8. But I was really, really wasn't eight, because just living around these people, hearing these stories about complaining about they didn't have money to pay the bills, they didn't have to do this, and the stuff they had to do, to earn it, to get it, and then what they would do to go out there, and all these fucked up shit that they would do. So I would hear these stories, right? So I would connect A with B and B with C, and then I would say, you know what, this is the way they're doing it over here. Got them in trouble, got them fucking in jail, because some of these people, they went for years to prison, because of the stuff they were doing. So I learned which ones I wanted to do to stay out of trouble and to get money and earn it, and save it and try to make it more. So that's what I learned, from the stories that these people would say, and just by shutting the fuck up and watching and listening, I would see how destructive behavior would get these people in trouble. So I didn't want that, you know. But I knew that it had to be a stepping stone somewhere, and you had to step on something to get to somewhere else, you know. So, so as the mall was coming into reality and happening, and there was money going to be generated, in that area, you know, I wanted to see what was happening because, like I said before that, there was a club called the Copacabana, and like I said, I learned, in there from these adults on how to, generate money. So, yeah. So when the mall finally opened, I would, again, I would continue waiting for my mom to fall asleep and film. I would take off. So I used to go walk the mall when it first opened, and I would see these businesses and these people, the first days. I saw the first times when a lot of these people were opening, the little businesses inside the mall, and plus where you would walk, they started renting these little booths out to these people in between the mall's businesses. So a lot of these people would sell, this Chinese products or whatever. It was cheaper that you just couldn't afford to open a store at the mall, but you could open one of these little booths. So there was these, as time went on, I started, you know, knowing these people, and they'd give you stuff, and they were real generous people. They would, mm, give you a good time. Like, there was a Nickelodeon in there. The lady would give me coins, and I'll get to that, later. But there's a story behind that. And so as I would walk, I would listen. These people would tell me, hey, how you doing? I see you here every day, and I would get to know them. Um, like there was a theater in there too, and that would make it my day. So as I would get to know him, I would get, you know, these people treating me like super cool because I was a little later on in life. There was a movie called Mallrats, so you could tell, you could say I was a little mall rat at that time. And so the theater they would let me in and see these free movies. Like I saw the movie Porky's, Ice Pirates. I saw Up in Smoke. Um, and in that time, these people could smoke in these theaters. So like you could spark up a cigarette inside the theater. It was like very cowboy days. Like a lot of these men were in there smoking weed. And, like during when I went to go see the movie Up in Smoke for the first time, these people were in there sparking up. So, and like I said, I would make it. Sometimes I would make it my day. Like I would go and I would do the little run before I get to see the movie. Like I would go and there was this place that would sell chocolates, and my favorite one was white chocolate, and then they would sell it like in chunks there at the Plaza Mall. And so I would pass by, they would give me a chunk for free. Hey, hi, Danny, how you doing? And they would give me the chocolate free. So I'd get that, put it in my pocket, and then walk to. There was like this kind of like German place that would sell these platters with these cheeses and these crackers and these meats and everything. So I would pass by there, and they would give me a bunch of the samples, and they would pack it up for me and everything because they would expect me to walk by, that day, a cute little fat kid with green eyes. I had hazel eyes. And so, they loved me. They treated me super cool. So I would get that, and then I would get to the theater, and they already had my popcorn and my Coke and everything ready, and they would let me in. And so I would be sitting there, and sometimes I'd have the whole theater to me, just watching the movie. Yeah, Star Wars, yeah. And Rocky. I saw all these movies, and yeah. And then one day, it finally happened to me. Like it finally happened to me, bro. It was super cool. There was these two white guys. They would, sometimes they would allow people to bring in their vehicles, into the mall. And they had this real nice uh, 70s kind of van. My dad was also a van guy. He had a Ford, an old Ford van. And so these white guys had this van, this real beautiful van, and they sold these aeroplanes, these foam planes. Like they would throw them and make tricks with them, and so that was pretty cool, So that was pretty cool. So I started hanging there, and I started, you know, they were awesome planes. They would throw them up in the air and they would fly back to them like a boomerang. At the time, and like I said, there were these huge foam planes, and they'd sell a lot. Like literally, they would sell a lot. Like I'd just be standing there watching them, going, one day, I'm gonna be generating money like that, and I'm gonna get a van like that. And again, you're talking about, I'm like 8 years old, seven, eight, seven, 7 years old, watching these people do this, and they were being successful at it. And the opportunity came when, because we live real, like I said, we live almost just adjacent, a couple of miles away from the border, and so we get a lot of people, a lot of Mexican people that just they don't speak English. So these white guys, they were always having a hassle, communicating with these people, and they would leave. They wouldn't buy nothing, because they just couldn't come, to an understanding, what pesos were and how to transfer the peso to the dollar. And well, my parents, here in the valley, my dad was a musician, and he would go to these bars in Reynosa, and there was one shout out to a bar out there, a rocker bar called Eddie's at that time. I don't know if it still exists or not, But at that time, these people would go and play rock music there, bikers and everything from here. And so, yeah, so my dad was known, for those areas, and we knew, these people. We knew the value of the peso, how much it was, in dollars, and how much the peso, whatever, right? The value of it. So me having that knowledge and having that experience of going to Mexico with my parents, on Sundays for them to go cut their hair or go buy pots. And my mom was always buying pots, and she would make raffles and raffle them off here because a lot of people just wouldn't go to Reynosa or that area, Tamaulipas, but we did. My uncles did, and so we had a connection there. So that was pretty cool. So as I'm standing there watching these people try to communicate to each other, I'm like, "You need help?" And the white guy goes, "Why? Can you translate?" I go, "Yeah, yeah." I was like, "I can't translate," and so I started translating for them, and they they gave me a job. They told me, "All right, do you want to work with us?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" And so we came to an agreement of $25 a day, and whatever airplanes were used that day, they would give them to me. One was kept for the next day, the rest were given to me. The rest were given to me, plus 25 bucks a day. So let's just say in that neighborhood, after a while, there was plenty of kids playing with foam airplanes. That's just the type of dude I was. So yeah, so they told me, but you know, come with a nice shirt, and they gave me 25 bucks that first day. I didn't do anything. They just told me go buy a shirt, polo. Yeah, go buy a polo shirt. I'm like cool. So I took my 25 bucks. I went to a store called Dillard's at the time. Dillard's was like the Beverly Hills 90210 store. Everybody wanted to buy from Dillard's. So I go in there and I get my first polo shirt. I go home. My mom was like, "Where'd you get this?" So I bought it. With what money? Like, just nothing. Just bought. I didn't tell her because I knew she was gonna tell me no. I go, "Oh, it's just that there was some Coke bottles, and cause at that time you would get like 10 cents a Coke bottle, a glass bottle. There were Coke bottles like they were made out of glass, and you get a dime. You go turn it in." So I went crazy collecting this. That's just the way I did things, Like that's just the way my mind worked from dealing with these people. The stuff they did, they had to do it secretly. So I learned how to manipulate my situation at a very young age, so people wouldn't see what I was doing. I would like kind of create a facade. So I had all these fucking Coke bottles. I didn't even know what to do with them anymore because it was like I didn't go sell them, but it was just to make my mom think that's what I was doing at the time. And so yeah, so I had a bunch of fucking Coke bottles. I didn't even know what the fuck to do with them. So then I had a little scam running with that. So these people that did need the Coke bottles, I had shitloads of them, and I learned that give it to them for free. 'Cause I could have been a dick and sold it to them or said, I want to profit off of it. I'm talking about, at 8 years old, this is what I'm doing. So I learned that, hey, man, you catch more flies with honey than you do with shit. Which I don't know if that's true or not, but whatever the fuck, the meaning means or whatever. But to me, treat him cool, and I knew that was going to come back to me in time. They would either tell you what people said or what people were talking about. They would become your little birds just by being cool with them. Because actually I was feeding them. You know, they would get money off these bottles and they would buy shit that they needed for their family or whatever. But a little fucking 8-year-old with a bunch of little fucking bottles. But I was making 25 bucks a day, so I didn't give a shit. So after a while, my mom caught on, and she made me stop. She squished me, she sidelighted me, she put me on the sidelines, and the money stopped coming. But I had a fucking blast. I think I collected about, I think I did about 500 that summer. About 500 bucks. An 8-year-old with 500 bucks. An 8-year-old with 500 bucks in his mattress. And so yeah, I would. These people would come and want to buy these planes, and I would translate for them. That's all I did. There was a store there called KB Store, and I'd go in there and buy these little metal soldiers. And yeah, the KB store was so cool, man. And there was a store called Woolworth, a store called Spencer's, and yeah. So that was what really changed me into learning how to save money and how not to lose your head. Always think. Always try to push yourself forward, make yourself better. My grandfather would always attack me with that one. He would always tell me, "You have a friendship, or you're friends with somebody. You know, I'm gonna tell you who you are by who I see you with, and you have to keep your ears open, your mouth shut, your eyes open, and not just because you're friends with these people mean that there's loyalty or the morality code works with everybody. Everybody has a different morality code. Everybody thinks different. So I learned that at a very young age. Um, there's some kids that just didn't, but I, if they were, I'm pretty sure if they had gone through my experience and actually listened instead of talking first, they would have learned something. There's another family that lived there that um, can't talk about them. I don't have the right to. I don't have permission to. But their father was a very, very respected person. Their uncle was a very, very respected person. Um, they jump into my story later on in life, but just by their mother was my dad's cousin, and these guys were earners. Their dad was an earner, a trench coat wearing guy. I wanted to be these people at the beginning. I didn't, and then when I learned, the lifestyle and what it brought, it just didn't bring anything good. So it was cool. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to, wear a trench coat. I wanted to be feared like them. But you know, it was it was this, it was an ish like you knew that if you did that type of stuff, you would, yeah, man, she was very, very, very profitable. But the risk, I just didn't want to take the risk, because I saw a lot of these people get killed, murdered. A lot of these people got burned alive. You'd see some of these people run down the street on fire, or they would run up to them and shoot them, right there in front of you. They didn't care if kids were around or not. And one day I got hit by them. They ran over me with a car. They got off. Told my dad, "Hey, sorry, man, we didn't see him," and they took care of it there. Money got put out. Here's the money to take him to the doctor. Keep your mouth shut. Nobody has to know. And that's just the way it was back then. There was no calling law enforcement. There was no calling a lawyer. Things were taken care of there on the spot. So you had to choose wisely what path you were going to take. Because it was a path that was going to lead you down to a lot of pain or to a lot of success. I wanted success. I didn't want the Tony Montana life. I just wanted to be comfortable. I didn't want to get beat up like my brother got beat up, almost to the point of getting killed. I didn't want to be my uncle just because he had to cross a bridge to get home, get fucked up. I didn't want to shoot nobody. I wanted toys. I wanted to play with toys that I saw. I wanted Santa Claus to bring me what I asked for, not not the Santa Claus that brought me whatever, whatever he could afford. So at a very young age, at that time, I said no, no. I want what I want, and I'm not gonna wait to get it. So when that opportunity arose, it went pretty cool, man. I had a blast, beautiful summer. $500 at the end of the summer. I bought my own bike. I had my own fish tank with a Batmobile inside of it. I don't know if you remember this. My friend, my sister, uh, the police officer's daughter. My mom would take care of her when they were at work. Her and him and his wife, and so she became like a sister to me. So one day we were seeing my aquarium that I bought with my own money, and she gave me a great idea. Like, hey, let's put the little Batman car. Because at that time, I don't know if some of you remember, there was like this little Batman car. It was all plastic, and Batman was like red. I don't know, for some reason he was red and Robin was yellow, and it was the black from the TV series. And so we decided to put it inside the aquarium. Man, it looks so good in there. So that's a very cool memory I have with my sister from another mother. Love you, sis. You see this. Keep cool. To this day, I see her and she's a side of me. And recently, her father passed away, the police officer that lived there. Just a genuine, beautiful person, man. And later on, uh, before he passed away, many years later, after he retired from being a police officer, he became the head security there from the Plaza Mall. And I was there one time recording, and he told me that, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to behave. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Vela. Yes, sir. Even to this day, as a grown up, he was still being cool with me and telling me, you can record here at the mall, but you have to behave. Yes, sir. And yeah, not just because he was a police officer meant that I needed to disrespect him. Not just because we had, you know, different views, on law meant that I was going to disrespect the guy. He was a good person. Always was a good person. So, Mr. Vela, rest in peace. Thank you for being that strong male role model, and teaching me how to respect. And also, the most valued one, which I learned from bad people and good people is shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. And listen, you'll learn. So, yeah, so that was the experience that changed my life forever. Ever, 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 ever. And to Savannah Street, thank you. Toronto Street, thank you. That other street, I remember, it was behind my grandma's house. Thank you. Jesse, thank you. There was a boy that lived there in the neighborhood. Uh, one Halloween, he was sitting in his living room while all of us were trick or treating. For some reason, he was sitting there in his living room that night, and he disappeared. I was one of the last persons to see him. So, so they just later on they found him. He disappeared with his uncle. His uncle said that he had to go away. But I never knew his story. I don't know what happened to him or nothing. But his name was Jesse. And he didn't make it out from there. And then there was another guy named Aaron Ortega, which is another story that I have no rights to talk about. But he didn't make it out either. Just a cool person. Just sometimes some people don't know when to be quiet. Um, I learned that. I'm 50 right now. And I can't believe it. I made it to this age. Especially trying to maneuver through all this bullshit, all this crap, all this fucking unnecessary violence, unnecessary hate, unnecessary um, racism. I think I'll end the video on that. So yeah, that's the experience that changed me for a long time. Once again, thank you for, if you are listening, if you are watching this, an interview, yeah, Valley Sit Down with DM. El Cuervo. Later on, y'all keep cool, man. I hope y'all had a happy Friday night, a happy Friday day, and y'all have a safe night. Y'all keep cool, keep generating, keep thinking, keep wanting to move forward, and be careful who you hang out with. Be careful who you put your trust in. Be careful who you tell your plans and your ideas to, because some of these people will take your ideas and run with them, not turn back, and not even acknowledge you or say thank you, which you shouldn't. Anytime you give anything away, anytime you help somebody, you shouldn't expect anything back. You know, do shit just because you're genuine, just because you're genuinely doing it for a good reason, and it'll come back to you slowly. You're not. It might not come back to you quick, but if you shut the fuck up, usually you'll see these little wins that come back to you, and you just find the appreciation that life slowly throws it back to you and shows you that, hey man, you're not alone. You know, there's people watching. There's people that you respect, that you help, and actually are there when you need them. And other than that, that's all I gotta say. Y'all keep cool. Have a good night. Mwah.